Good morning, everybody. As we go to the Chita, so today we're holding the fourth reading in the Parshas Koirach. We're holding on chapter 17, verse number 9 in the book of Bamidbar. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lamer. And God spoke to Moshe, saying, Hirim Metecha Eida Zeis, remove yourself from this community of Achal Esim Karaga, and I will destroy them in an instant. Vayipal al Pneihem, and they fell upon their face. Vayim Moshe Laden, Kach Samachtes, saying Lebeish, Moshe told Laden, grab a pan, put upon a fire, Malam Azbeach from the temple of the Sim Keteris, and put upon it some incense. And go quickly into the community. And bring forgiveness to them. Because the anger going out from God. The plague has begun. Now she says, where did he get this from? This concept. This secret, the angels of death had conveyed to Moshe when he descended to heaven to receive the Torah. That the incense that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash can halt a plague, as it's brought down in Masechta Shabbos. So Moshe Rabbeinu knew this from heaven. Vayikach Aaron Kashadiva Moshe and Aaron did what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Vayara Toltecha Kol, he read in the midst of the congregation. V'hine Chela Negev, and behold, the plague started in amongst the people. He put upon it some ketores, and he forgave upon the nation. And he stood between the living and the dead. And the plague ended. Rashi says the Medrash, Mechilta, writes, he took hold of the angel of death, Aaron, and detained him against his will. The angel said to him, allow me to carry out my mission. But Aaron replied, Moshe commanded me to restrain you. The angel said, I'm the messenger of God, and you're a messenger of Moshe, so who's more important? And Aaron replied, Moshe Rabbeinu says nothing on his own accord, only what he heard from the Almighty. If you don't believe me, the Holy One, blessed be He, and Moshe at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Come and meet with me and ask them. And this is what it says, Aaron returned to Moshe Rabbeinu. So he returned to him with the Malach HaMavis. Another explanation, why was this plague halted through the incense? Because the Israelites were slandering and mailing the incense, saying that it's a lethal potion. For through that Nadav and Aviah died, 250 men died. The Holy One, blessed be He, therefore said, see that I can halt a plague. It's not the incense that is a plague, it's the sins that brings death. Verse 14, and that Magefa, that plague, the dead, were Abba Asar Elef, 14,700. Besides the dead of Kedach. Yashav Aaron al Moshe, and Aaron returned to Moshe al Pesach Hayomed, to the tent of meeting. He brought the Malach HaMavis with him. Magefa Netzara, and the plague stopped. That completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. So we're holding in the middle of chapter 9 in the Geras, in the portal of not the Geras, not the letter, the portal, the teaching of Yichud, of oneness and of God. Macha Hubelis, I have no idea. So we're holding him in this portion. I mean, this concept of the unity and oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're holding in this concept of that chokhmah, that if you understand, if you comprehend the difference between chokhmah and asiyah, between you by yourself, between chokhmah, within the aspect of wisdom, and the concept of see how far different one from the others, then you'll understand that if self understood to God, even chokhmah, even the aspect of chokhmah, is far from Him, and is far beyond Him. The aspect of chokhmah, that even chokhmah can't compare the Eibishter. Chokhmah and asiyah are in the same level of both a concept of far distance from Him. The point is over here, because as Alter Rebbe continues to explain that it's hard for us, for humanity, to even comprehend this concept. That Rambam himself writes, it's hard for us to comprehend these aspects because they're far beyond our comprehension. Since the power isn't so much as it's not within the created beings to comprehend the Gestaltus Madreges HaChochma. They only can comprehend only the descent of levels of wisdom. Shirei Shisam, they only can start comprehending from what Chochma extends from Chochma, what extends from wisdom. The Madreges Asiyah Ashfela, till ultimately it comes into the level of action. But higher than Chochma is not in their comprehension. So it's very hard to explain to somebody a concept that's higher than Chochma. And therefore, the only way you could explain it, is in the negative, so to say. We say that in the relationship to the Holy One, blessed be He, to explain it, we say, if you understand the concept of Chochma, you understand from the concept of Chochma, and you understand the way Chochma, wisdom ultimately comes down into action, and the way that wisdom, when it comes down to action, wisdom itself is far beyond the concept of action. Now we can say, so the Eibishter is higher than wisdom. Not higher, the Eibishter is far beyond wisdom. So therefore we can explain the negative, that the Eibishter, to God, wisdom and action are the same level. So the level of wisdom is considered exactly as the level of action. But we use this example simply because there's no greater descent in the realm of human experience than the descent of wisdom in action. We can explain, wow, how far wisdom extends, that it can extend a lofty concept in one's wisdom can ultimately come down into action. That's why you have some people that they have wisdom, but they cannot bring it into action. They need somebody else to bring it, their wisdom, to take their theory and bring it into action. Because it's so far, their wisdom is so far beyond the concept of action that they themselves cannot bring into action. So we can comprehend that. So now we can say, to the Eibishter, if we want to explain to God, we say, God, that wisdom and action to Him is the same thing. And that gives us the analogy. That is to say, how we give that analogy. Why do we give that analogy? To say that God is high and exalted, the very great and very greatly elevated above the level of wisdom. So we can't even understand God's wisdom, because by God, wisdom and action is the same thing, which is amazing to us. Therefore, in truth is, therefore, it's not appropriate. That's why the sages and the Rama would agree that to the Eibush, it's not appropriate to say that he's a wise person, a wise entity. It's not appropriate. It's inappropriate. So it's not all appropriate to ascribe him anything to pertain to wisdom. Even in a very lofty and sublime form. Meaning, even if doing so, we mean to express how transcendent wisdom. You can't say God is wisdom. For example, to say of him, to God, that he is beyond the capacity any higher or lower creature to comprehend his wisdom, and does that say, oh, God is the greatest wisdom? That doesn't make sense. That's an embarrassment to God. Like saying to a billionaire, he has more than $1 million. It's embarrassment to him. So therefore, it's embarrassing to God to say that he's greater than wisdom of man. That's what is that? That's garnish. That's nothing. So that's why the Gemara says you have to be careful. You should only praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the praises that the Torah itself praise God. And therefore we call God HaGadol, HaGiber, all these expressions. God is great, God is mighty, Yishmachama. These, because the Torah expresses it that way. So therefore we express it in the way of the Torah, but not it's our expression that we're giving God, that God is great or God is powerful. These are all human terms which you really not allowed to give. You're not allowed to say these terms on God because it doesn't go in our comparison of what great is. So even this negative reference to wisdom is also inappropriate. To say that God is wisdom and action is the same is also not such a great expression. For comprehension pertains and applies to a matter of wisdom and intellect. Whether to say I understand it, or whether I say I cannot understand it. Either way, I could understand, I can understand, is very human terms. Because of the profundity, greatness of the wisdom. I cannot understand it. Yeah, great. That I say I cannot understand it is not a big chachma. That doesn't mean the wisdom is great because I can't understand it. So you can't understand it. Maybe somebody smarter can understand it. Even Shlomo Melech said the wisdom of the Torah is so great that I cannot understand it. The Eibishter gave me the gift of wisdom and I cannot understand. That's what we say, that's human terms. So Shlomo Melech said on himself that he's not smart. Okay. Shlomo Melech, that was the smartest person, said upon himself that he's still not smart. But the Eibush is above Seichel HaChachma. God is above, transcends intellect and wisdom. Significant, I cannot understand God. What kind of statement is that? It's not like God is great, so wisdom he can't understand. God is not the wisdom of man. So to say I can understand it is not a statement. Because God is not in the realm of comprehension. So you can't say I can't comprehend something that is not comprehensible. It's not comprehensible, so you can't comprehend it. So it doesn't make sense even to say I can't comprehend it. And if one does state that it's impossible to comprehend God, that's like saying I cannot. So he who states it's impossible to comprehend him is like one who says that some lofty and profound concept that it cannot be touched with his hands. So that's the person says, I cannot touch a dvar seichel. You're kidding me, because it's a seichel. A seichel is not touchable. So you don't have to say that. It's a stupid statement. So you can't touch it because it's not a concept of a physical thing. It's a concept. It's a spiritual. It's a lofty. It's a mind concept, and a mind concept cannot be touched with the hand. So you don't have to say it even because of the depth of the concept. So you cannot touch it. So you're saying you cannot touch it. You can't touch it because it's untouchable. The Eibush is untouchable. He's unknowable. He's above intellect. So he says, I cannot comprehend the Eibush. That's not a statement to say. Whoever will hear such a statement will laugh at him, mock him. Because the sense of touch, when you say you can touch something, it applies to a physical object, which may grasp in the hands, and not a spiritual concept. So a spiritual concept cannot be touched. Everybody knows that. It doesn't have to be said. And so too, when it comes to the concept of God, by the Eibishter, by God, Medreges HaSeichel, that God is equal, the concept of intellect, by God, intellect and action is the same thing. Because they're both a creation, and God is above intellect of man, above all intellect of this world, whether it's man or malachim or souls. God's above any aspect of it. Even this comprehension is a supernal spiritual intellect. The intellect of the world of Atzilus, which is a spiritual intellect, far beyond a human intellect. Even by God, that intellect of the world of the world of Atzilus is like a physical stone. Feel is Chachmei. Even the Madrega of Chachmei, the higher in Kabbalah, it's called Chachmei, the higher level of wisdom of the world of Atzilus, Hamachayis Kulam, which gives life to everything. Chachma of the world of Atzilus, which is called in Kabbalah Chachmei, the higher level of Chachma. Ksiv Kulam b'Chachma Asisa, as the Alter Rebbe says before, Kulam b'Chachma Asisa. Your Chachma and your action is the same thing. Everything, Chachma is also Asisa. You're created. So all creation is rooted in the wisdom of Atzilus. Nevertheless, even the supernal wisdom of Atzilus is considered as an action in relation to God. For God transcends it infinitely. It is thus impossible to say that God can or cannot be apprehended through intellect. Even to say God cannot be apprehended is not a very intellectual statement. In so much as intellect and wisdom are not at all the means by which God can be grasped. But ultimately, now we're coming back. Ultimately, in the Torah, God is called Chacham. God is called the Chacham. That's what's written in the Torah. So you can't aim mikri echem de pshutei. So the Torah says, "Masha Kodesh Baruch Hu Nikra Chacham," because of that the Torah characterizes God as Chacham in the pasuk. Gam Chachameinu Zal, and also the great sages, Kinu Loi Madrega Malas HaChachma. The great sage Kulam b'Chachma Asisa, and the Zohar writes that the Chachma of the Eibishter and God is one. So we characterize God as Chachma. So self-understood. We characterize because it's a source. We don't know the source, but we know it is the source. Everything comes from the infinite part of God. So therefore, Chachma comes from God. Do we know the connection between Chachma of Atzilus, Chachma, the highest level of Chachma, Chachma Ilah, to God? No, we don't. But we know everything comes from God. So therefore, Chachma is God. The stone is God. Everything comes from God. Therefore, we say that everything is God. But Chas v'Shalom, to make God a stone, or make God Chachma. That's Avodah Zarah. That's idol worship. And because the source of wisdom, everything is a source of God. So the source of wisdom of Chachma, of the will of Atzilus, is from Him. Issues and emanates at the essence level, supernal wisdom, which is the will of Atzilus. Everything comes from Him. And that's why God is merciful, because mercy comes from Him. V'chasid, and God is pious, because the concept of piety comes from Him. Al Shem Shumaka Rachamim, because God is a source. Without God, you don't have Rachamim. Without God, you don't have Chesed. You have nothing. V'chein Shar Midas, and so too the other attributes of God all come from Him. God is referred to by the names of other attributes because He is the source, not because we're making God Chesed. We are taking God and we're saying, "Oh, God is Chesed." No, the Eibusher can't be characterized as Chesed. But the source of Chesed is God, because everything comes from God. Because they all emanate, they proceed and emanate from God. So therefore, we use these terminology. But Chas v'Shalom, to say God is Chachma. Chachma is it's above and beyond that. Echuma, Yodula Maskilim. And the man, now the question going back. So how's that happy? How do you go from an infinite to a finite? That's the $1 million question. And the manner of nature, the flow of emanation, how and what, and how the intellect and motive actually emanate from Ein Sof. How is that possible? Which is totally transcends them. This is the big question. This is what Chassidus tries to deal with. How does Ein Sof come into a Chochmah D'Atzilas? How that happens when you have an infinite thing and you have Eil Atzilas, which is a finite thing. How does one thing deal with the other? Exactly how they are. For after they have emanated from him, they are wholly united with him. That is known to those Hamaskilim, those who are the learners of Kabbalah, those who comprehend lofty concepts and very transcendent concepts, have the capability of a little bit of understanding how this works. But it's extremely a lofty concept, understood, and something that we need to first open our minds and learn a lot of Chassidus to be able to ultimately come to a comprehension of this Seder Hishtalshlus, so to say, the way things come into the world. But that ends the Tanya of the day. Beautiful, beautiful Tanya of the day. Today is the 29th day of the month, my dear friends. Yes, 29th day of the month. And the Tillim of the day is going to be chapter 140 to chapter 144. If you do those 5 chapters, you do the Chitas of the day. The Rebbe writes today in Hayom Yom, man's avodah, according to Chassidus, is to custom himself to perceive individual divine providence. Hashgacha pratis, this was the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that everybody needs to be able to see in his life divine providence, his personal divine providence, how God in his goodness renews the universe and all the creatures every moment with his particular divine providence, how God is running my life, which constitutes to exclusion of all else, the reality, life force, and sustenance, existence of all creatures. And that's my avodah, to see Hashgacha pratis within me, within the world around me, to realize that everything that's happening is divine providence, and it's God's will, and it's God's action, as we learn in Chassidus, because my existence is because God is a true existence. And since God is existence, and all existence comes from him, so everything that happens is because of God's existence, and because of, and not to stop God's existence, but God's Hashgacha pratis, the Eibishter is Nitzav Olav, God is standing upon me and wants to see exactly what I'm doing at this present moment. Have a wonderful and beautiful day. I want to mention that at Midshem tomorrow we are going to do Chitas at 8:15. 8:15. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh and Friday is Rosh Chodesh. Both days we're going to do it at 8:15. And I wish you all a good night of Rosh Chodesh, Chodesh Tammuz, Chodesh HaGeula. It should bring redemption to the entire Jewish nation. God bless you all.